Roll call. Just the trustee, we're not going to do roll call for the entire
Okay, Mayor Bachman,
present.
Trustee Stelter,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Valentine, Trustee McGinnis, Trustee Markle. Okay.
Dave.
Oh, Trustee Knudsen? Okay.
All right, okay, well, this work session is officially rolling, so.
Carry on. Thank you so much. My name is Kira Gregory. I'm here with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. With me is Angela Green Garcia. We are working in the local assistance unit. Basically, our job is to provide drinking water training to systems throughout Colorado. Could be community, non-community, small, big, doesn't really matter. We're just here to make sure that folks who are in charge of water systems feel like they have the resources that they need to run those systems. Jeremiah and I have been working together for a few months now, kind of working on Zoom, talking about what's going on in Paonia. And he invited me down here. So we're going to focus on two things mainly today. One is the technical, managerial, and financial worksheet that you all worked on. Kind of go over some areas that you want to grow, come up with some goals for growth. And then I'm thinking with our second hour, maybe hour and a half, we'll be working on what's called a tabletop exercise. Has anybody done one of those before? Great. So it'll be a learning experience. A tabletop exercise is where we go through an emergency situation as if it was happening, right? We talk about who would do what in terms of water management and community management in general, right? So I'm glad to see some folks here, maybe not from water as well. And then after that, once we kind of figure out where those holes are in your emergency management, that's when we start to do the hot wash section, where we create a plan based on kind of those holes that you see in your emergency management process. So that's kind of the gist of where we're going today. I'm going to hand out the TMF worksheet. It's actually, what is that? It's actually, I didn't get the latest version just because you were at a hotel last night, so I couldn't print it out. So I will review. Oh, yes. No, you're fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, I just.
No, I do. Wow.
Take these with a grain of salt because the financial side, Mary had a chance to add to it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. Awesome, that's a great setup. So.
The financial side, Mary had a chance to.
Uh-oh. Can you turn?
I'm muted and my volume's off. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen.
Yeah.
I hate hearing my volume.
The owls are the owls.
Oh, it's on my.
I actually think you stop sharing your screen for a second.
Can you turn?
I'm muted and my volume's off.
Well, what happens if you receive that? Sorry, I had every pop up in a way. My bad.
Okay, no, that's totally fine.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, so let's look, pull up our agenda if we have it left. Here you go. Yeah, so we'll introduce ourselves and our team real quick. Myself, I worked in water and wastewater labs prior to working here, did a lot of training in those labs, and really kind of developed a passion for that, and we got this job luckily. Angela, you want to give a quick intro?
Sure, I am the newest member of our team. My background is all over the place in all things science. My background is actually as a geologist, so I'm really familiar with all of the ground geology. My role with LED team is in managerial financial, working with just the management of systems and then working to obtain funding when projects are needed, that kind of thing. So, yeah, and I do have some experience working in a treatment facility as well.
Jessica Morgan is the, liaison for the Water Wastewater Operator Certification Board. Nicholas Griffin is another coach. He was an operator on the Front Range. And Margaret Bauer manages some contracts for us, assistant grants. So we're really here to focus on building resilience today. I think evaluating your technical, managerial, and capacity kind of shortcomings, right? And creating goals around that will definitely go a long way to build resilience. And then also running through emergency management. I know you have ran through emergency management in the last few weeks, right? So I think we can use that as a lens to kind of view this process through. I definitely want you all to leave here with tools, templates, and resources. So we'll go over those probably closer to the end. Identifying those areas needing improvement, and then developing a plan of action. That's a lofty goal for 2 hours, so we'll see how far we get. But I'm always here, so we can always come back. Easy notes. Yes, it's so beautiful here. I hate it over it. Yeah, so we want to do quick introductions, and there's more folks than I anticipated. So just name what's your role in area, and then if you have any burning questions about emergency management or TMF capacity building. Does anyone want to be brave and start?
Samara Better, I'm the town clerk, and we tend to be kind of the front lines getting information out, so I figured it was a good thing for me being on.
I was gonna say, why don't we start at the back of the room? We always start at the front. Let's start at the back for a change.
Officer Gillen, patrol officer, and if there were emergency, I'll be referring to this guy.
Great, love that.
Well, thank you. I'm Garrett, I'm the sergeant of the police department. And I guess I'm going to been lying here and I will refer to Matt. We have an emergency.
I love that. That's exactly what we're talking
We
about.
delegate you, yeah.
Perfect. It's called, there's a little word for it. We'll talk all about it.
Thomas Seeley, patrol officer, and I will.
Yes.
Investigator Patrick Hanger, obviously, Berta.
I'm Derek Heineberg, water and wastewater treatment, for Jason and Corey.
I'm Jason Harrison, public works supervisor.
Jordan Redden, water wastewater operator.
I think we missed you in the back.
I'm with you guys.
My name is Matt Lemminger. I'm chief of police here. Obviously, depend on the emergency, whether it's fire, dispatch, sheriff's department, CDOT.
So you're one of the centers of incident command.
Super.
I mean, I'm just listening to your guys, right?
Corey Heineberg, public works director.
Good to meet you in person, Corey.
Thanks. Jeremiah Garcia, water wastewater operator.
I'm Rick Stelter, trustee.
Paige Smith, another trustee.
And Mary Becker there.
Beautiful. And just so I know for my folks, because I gotta tell folks back at the office, are you 3 elected officials?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Make sure to tell the right people I'm in front of you today. We like to start all of our work with communities by offering you all thanks for the work that you do. I think a lot of public service work goes without gratitude.
Let's introduce the people that are on the.
Oh, sure.
Zoom, too,
Yes.
because we have another trustee in our interviews. So, trustee McGinnis, if you have a voice.
Yeah, hi. I'm Trustee McInnes. I am, I serve as a trustee for the town board.
Glad you're here, thank you.
And then Leslie.
Hi, I'm Leslie Klusmeyer. I'm the interim town administrator.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here, Leslie.
Thanks.
Yes, so we like to start by offering you all thanks for the work that you do. I come into town to drink the water that you provide and flush the toilets. So I really appreciate all of the work that you do personally. But you know, on behalf of your community, thank you for the work that you do. People turn their taps on and they only call you when the water's not what they want it to be, right? Which I'm sure is rare here, so. Just some general information. This is the hotline to call if you ever have issues at your plant. Tampering, high nitrite, TC or EC, high turbidity, or failure to meet your microbial removal at entry point. Your operators know what I'm talking about. Basically, if anything goes wrong in treatment, this is the number to call. I recommend that all folks have this number on their desk, just because the people handling the emergency likely won't have time to call the number, right? And that's what we find often in emergency situations is the folks that are, you know, front line, kind of handling everything, need to have backup on the administrative end, right? So that they know, your administrators know what's going on enough to communicate with the state. You can also, if you don't reach anybody on that line, you can try our 1-877 24-hour line. You need the number? Yes, no problem.
Oh, I did get the number, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, yeah. This is another number. This is what we have online. I think this is what you call it, Corey, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't even know like what you were talking about,
Yeah.
which is frustrating, I understand. So this goes to a central dispatch in the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, right? So these are people that are handling, you know, disease outbreaks, vector identification, and drinking water and wastewater emergencies. So that's why it went to somebody that probably has less knowledge in water than you're used to talking to at the division.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I like to give this number out as the first one to call. And we'll stick on this one so you can write it down. Something that a lot of folks aren't aware of is that it is a requirement in Reg 11, which is our primary drinking water regulation, to call in case of tampering. So if somebody pops a lid to a tank and you don't know who it is, give us a call and just let us know that you're looking into it.
Hello, I'm Tom Markle. Sorry for being late.
No problem, Tom. I'm Kara Gregory. This is Angela. Another great resource, whether or not you're an operator, is to stay up to date on drinking water regs, our blog called Aqua Talk. You can find it by searching CDPHE Aqua Talk. We're starting to post a lot more for decision makers, such as yourselves, to kind of get into the management and financial capacity building for drinking water systems. You can subscribe to the blog by going to WQCD Engagement. I give search terms because our website is not the easiest to navigate, so.
It's also a great resource to go back and look at older articles that have long information as well.
And then if you're interested in emergency management, security, upcoming opportunities for funding, you can sign up for any email list you want on here. Our communications department is very good about not spamming people, right? Like for our training resource listserv, you know, we send out maybe once a quarter. So, yeah, I definitely recommend looking into that. So as we're talking about everything today, kind of a lens I want us to use is asset management. And asset management is how are you identifying what you have in terms of infrastructure, personnel, equipment, right? Identifying how long it's going to last you and making a plan for, you know, when somebody has to move on to a new position or when the infrastructure has to be replaced, right? An asset management plan starts with your asset inventory, and then from that, you're generating a capital improvement plan, right? And I think oftentimes asset management gets put out of the emergency management category. And I think I want to bring that into it, right? I want to bring asset management into emergency management so that we're thinking about the finances behind all of these actions that your folks will take during an emergency, right? And what supports could be kind of, messed up.
The idea is to be proactive about rather than reactive.
Right.
Reactionary oftentimes is the lost.
And we provide trainings, especially on asset management, so if you'd ever like to attend one of those via webinar, or if you'd like for us to come out and give one, I will do that. Okay, this is kind of, I like to put these two next to each other because really a lot of what we're doing is cyclical thinking, right? So what's the current state of my assets? What's the higher level of service? What are my risks? What are my best O&M and capital improvement investment strategies? And what is my long-term funding strategy? And then you start at the top again, right? So you're continually going through this process. It's very living documents, right? And that's the same thing with emergency management. You're identifying your threats, you're identifying areas of vulnerability in your system and in your community. You're building resilience through planning and training, making plans, right? Of course, you then have to implement those during an emergency. Afterwards, you're recovering. And oftentimes this last piece is what's missed, right? It's called a hot wash, where we're looking at what happened, what did we want to have happened, and where was there a gap, and how can we fix that next time, right? So that's kind of, again, that cyclical nature that we'll kind of use when we're talking about all of these things today. So let's start by going to the worksheet.
Do you have the latest version?
I
Yeah.
do, I'll pull that up for us. This is it, yes. Let me share it. Okay, perfect. And let me know if we need to zoom in. So in terms of timing, we're doing pretty good. Do you want to go through line by line? Do you have kind of any preference of where to start?
No, just defer to you. I think, I don't know, I think the things that I feel, I added a 1 to, I feel really confident about, and if it's in the no column, it's definitely a gap that,
Okay.
yeah.
So why don't we just start with the no's? We'll go to T4. Do you have redundancy in your source water supply? Wells or intakes to allow for well pump failure or source water rehab while producing enough water to keep up with demand? So the answer was we do have redundant supplies, but we are unable to use them due to infrastructure inadequacies at the moment. So let's talk about that. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's, we have a treatment plant that's down right now because we have sanitary defects with one of our storage tanks, and we have a whole capital improvement plan to address that. But it's a chicken and an egg scenario. It's really challenging to unwind, right? Yeah. But so we know it's a deficiency and we're actively working on it.
Great, wonderful. So the planning is already in place
Yeah.
to create that resilience. Do you feel confident in kind of the project management aspect of that in terms of, do you feel like you have enough people to kind of move forward where you need to?
So we have Mary and Leslie taking on, working with the engineers and getting the loan application in, and we haven't actually moved into the implementation side of things. So there's yet to be seen what the project management capacity looks like.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, have you found an engineer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, make sure you've vetted them, that they've done similar projects or similar sizes. We find the biggest problem with engineers, they do an amazing job, but they're not always right size for the system, right? You don't want an engineer that's working with Denver Water. You want an engineer that's working with Estes or Ponchos or whatever, right? A smaller community, especially when it comes to funding, right? Are you planning on using SRF, state revolving fund?
That's what we're in the process. We've had our pre-qualification meeting, and we're also, and so we're next steps in the engineers are doing the PNAs, I believe they're called.
Yep, excellent. Okay, you're well on your way. Great job. So this one will very rapidly in the next few years go into the yes column.
Well, we should begin construction in spring of 2024.
Excellent.
Yep.
That's very exciting. And it's mainly on the storage tank. Is that the main issue?
Oh, it's a whole, it's lots more than just the storage tank. That's only step one.
Okay, great. That's exciting. It's really exciting. Does the system T5, we'll move on, does the system have a source water protection plan that is up to date and implemented? Not up to date, TOP has a direct treatment ultrafiltration membrane system, needs to update to SWPP and develop emergency response plan, especially to wildfire threats. Okay. Perfect. This will be a great conversation to lead into all of that today. I think it's about capturing, again, those lessons learned and understanding who's going to be responsible for the next steps, right? Can we identify action items out of this meeting to move forward to get closer to that goal of feeling prepared for a fire, really is what I'm hearing, right? We have a whole unit that does source water protection evaluations. They work with Colorado Rural Water Association. I'd say if you are feeling like yours isn't up to date, reach out to them and just say, we need to redo this, right?
The last guy who was leading that department is gone now, is a
Correct.
point of contact, 'cause I think maybe you were trying to reach out to somebody over there, that could be wrong.
I would reach out to Kristen Hughes.
Okay.
She is in the source water protection unit. You can copy me on the email to her. Just so she knows that I'm working with you. Because I don't know what kind of precedent there is for a utility that already has a source water plan that wants it to be better, right? And I think that would actually be really good information for their unit to have. Which is that you feel like last time you did it, it was a little bit incomplete, especially when it comes to fire.
Yeah, there's no section in our source water protection plan on wildfire readiness.
Which I think would be the biggest risk to you all.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have big industry,
No.
hardly at all, right?
Yeah,
So-
a little bit of industries.
Maybe farming,
Oh, yeah, we got farming.
right? So maybe nitrate issues, which I think were referenced in there. But in terms of fire, that's probably. Grand Junction would be a great system for you to talk to specifically about post-fire water issues. They had, after some of the fires in Glenwood Canyon, you know, the turbidity is going to increase in your source water, and your volatile organic carbons, your VOCs are going to increase too. I believe they did jar tests, which is basically where you're looking at how much polymer you need to use in order to settle all of that out. But they also may have had to do some filtration, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's, you know, throughout this presentation, we'll talk about building partnerships, and I think that would be a great partner.
What about Rifle and Silicon, those communities?
Yeah.
They were seriously affected. by that.
Yeah, I would reach out to them as well. That might even be better, yeah, because they're closer to your size.
Yeah.
Barry, you said Rifleman.
So,
Newcastle draws directly out of the river.
Well, right, and that's, I can help you kind of find.
but I was gonna say, because that those fires are basically in the watershed
Yep.
too, so.
And that's the main concern, right? I mean, obviously what's gonna happen if a fire happens, but mostly I'm concerned about after a fire, right? And that's what we'll kind of push the tabletop in that direction today. It's not really in there, but I know that that's our main concern, so we'll continue to talk about that. Okay, so it sounds like this is an area, I'm just gonna highlight this on mine, that we actually want some action on, so maybe we can come up with an action item on next steps for that source water protection plan today. T6, does the system have emergency power capabilities for all critical facilities? Backup power is limited to a few UPS units for SCADA and PLCs. So what is that? Can you translate that for the room?
Yeah, those are just like little computer battery backups. It is just enough time for the plant to go into, you know, a certain mode of valves being open or whatever, but It's really just a half hour of adjusting some controls before we completely lose power. Yeah.
And could you, let's say there was a power outage for like 4 days, could you manually operate your plant?
I don't think so. We need those pumps. We have, yeah, we need the pumps.
Okay, so that's a big, big area of vulnerability. During the Marshall fires, they actually blew up their generator because it was gasoline, right? So they moved through it. So it's not a catch-all to have a generator, but again, it's like, what mitigation are you doing around your plants to make sure that there's not enough brush that it would get close enough to catch anything on fire? So I just bring that up to say, even if you do get a generator, you still got to protect that generator, right? Angela and I have been working on identifying funding for building emergency management infrastructure specifically. So let's talk about that, Jeremiah, because that can be a really good way to use funding there. To buy, to purchase a generator.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. What was also really interesting is clock doesn't need that much power.
Right, yeah, it's all gravity.
It's all gravity.
If we really needed to in 4 days, and one day we could probably rig up something to put a PRV in there. And we're in for that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it sounds like there might be some capacity to continue operations.
We gotta get that other plant back on.
Yeah.
First, though.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
What do you think about that next one, Jordan? You think that's accurate, that we got enough treatment storage capacity to deal with fluctuations in supply and demand?
It's the fire. That's the
I know, but the engineers say we have enough, like our system is sized appropriately to deal with fire, but unless we have a Marshall fire, you know, then it's like the ballgame changes, like what we need is totally different.
But the question is, you know, when you're talking about fire up on the side of the mountain, is that we're gonna let the fire range because there aren't structures up there that we're gonna protect, because the usual fire management is protecting structures.
Correct.
It's not protecting the forest itself. So if all we're interested in is protecting our infrastructure, we don't need to pump water up on the mountain to save the forest on the mountain. What we're interested in is water saving the structures in town and around town.
Do we have any fire folks with us today?
No.
No. Do you, so that would be, I hope you understand who would be putting a fire out on the mountain.
It would be Colorado Fire and the US Forest Service, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the next conversation we have about this, those are definitely two groups that we would want to be at the table. Because we can probably guess that that's correct, Mayor, but I don't know if it is, right? And they oftentimes take, kind of all bets are off during emergency, right? So there, if, you know, you guys will have, you know, incident command center, but they might also have incident command center. So how are those two bodies going to talk to each other? And could their incident command center say, we're actually going to take primacy over you right now, and we're going to use your water?
Right, and that may not be used for what we think it's gonna be used for, right? So it is a really good conversation to have ahead of time to know that.
I've got some concerns with wildfire fighting, and especially with our particular system, if they use retardant up there, we could have a long-term, as in years, problem. And that's something that we need to discuss with them and delineate where we cannot allow that to be happening.
Yeah, that's the wolf does, the WD, that like. Yeah, to have that nuanced conversation with them, that like, you know, our water system depends on these intakes, right? So at all costs, try to protect these are things you can take the water, let it burn, whatever, but like, so, but that's, I think that's where to have those nuanced conversations, yeah.
Leslie.
We need them first.
Hi, I just wanted to mention and back up Kira about talking to Colorado Fire. I lived in Glenwood Springs, as we all know, for 20 years, and I was there when the Storm King fire happened, and it still makes me tear up. But what happened during that fire is we were last on the totem pole because they thought at the time it was a very small fire and they had fires raging throughout the West. So by the time they dropped people in, we didn't have the fire had gone out of control. So emergency isn't just thinking that this group is going to show up. They also have limited resources. And I doubt very much Paonia would come to the top of the list if there are a lot of other fires going on.
That's a great point, Leslie. Part of what we're here to do is find solutions, not just identify problems, right? So I want us to have that mind frame as well. Is there another body organization that could help put out fires, right?
Pelican Fire is actually gonna be the first one to respond.
Right,
Really,
exactly.
here,
Who will, sorry?
Pelican Fire.
Paonia Fire.
Yeah, they're involved, not in our, local community-based fire, but they also service our surrounding areas. Lake Kent's a fire chief there, so that would be our point of contact on that, but.
Yeah.
They're gonna be first there.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, if the larger fire comes in and takes primacy, they'll take your fire unit, right? And that's why that conversation is so important ahead of time, is you're basically saying to them, like, here's what we have, here's our resources, here's our concerns. You're eliminating that concern for them entirely, because during an emergency, they're going to like the big questions, right? And they're not really thinking about the nuanced small stuff. And so that conversation is gonna help that, so that they know, and they're more likely to respond the way you want them to respond versus in their predicted kind of, regimen that they approach when they have a fire situation like that.
So
Just on the notes you were just taking,
Yeah.
like Levi over at the Ranger, he's a fire expert, and like he was really interested to know like which assets we need somebody on the ground to like close intakes or something. So he really wanted that information.
great. Is that US Forest Service?
Yeah, U.S. Forest Service. There's no way we're going out there. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like unless we have somebody who's frontline trained, we're just not going to do it. So
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
I have this image of a truck driving into a fire, right? And it is, I mean, like, we are talking with civic servants, right? You all are people that are gonna drive into the fire, and my thing is always, your lives are much more important than structures, right? So how can we make a plan that doesn't put you at risk? Because water operators were spraying down buildings during the Marshall Fire, right? And mitigation is great, but if a fire's coming, get out of there. That's the most important. Okay, so it seems like, I'm just gonna start making some action items. I want you all to take ownership of these, these aren't my action items, but I'm certainly here to help you with project management around them. So I would suggest putting on a table talk with your fire partners to start to hash out some of these questions. If you would like help facilitating that, I'm more than happy to do that. There's also local emergency planning committees throughout Colorado. They have a lot of resources to put on your own tabletop exercise. So I can work with them on that.
and I just want to throw out the CRWA does have a program right now for municipalities to inform that whole just system.
Great.
So they'll help facilitate that and get that information to these primacy fire agencies, like, the plan's already hashed out what to do, instead of us reacting or responding.
And can you spell out that acronym for us?
I think it's WFDSS. It's the Wildfire, I forget what the D is, support system.
So I'm saying an action item would be to connect with CRWA about.
Yep, exactly. You remember that email?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, it's actually Leslie has.
Yep, go ahead, Leslie, thank you.
Leslie?
Oh, sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
Can I say this is like the most respectful board meeting I've ever been a part of? Oh, see you all. You seem like a very nice group. Chemical supply shortage, we could probably talk for hours about that. A few months is actually pretty standard.
I don't think it's a few months.
You think we're more or less right now?
We're already in need of moratorium and they just came.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So like a month?
That's different during winter, but this time of the year, we're going through much more.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, I mean, we used to store a lot in the shop. Yeah, so.
Okay. So I think that's a long-term capital improvement planning kind of thing. Jeremiah, Corey, what do you think will need to happen to increase that capacity?
Can we use the annex? It just seems like space right now, right?
Yeah, it's just creating a space to have
More storage.
more on hand.
Secure storage.
Yeah.
So our goal there would be to create secure storage.
Yeah.
And I apologize, Google Sheets does not have spell check, so I'll do that again. Redundant storage allowing for continuity of operations during comprehensive tank maintenance. So this is, I'm sure, going to come about when we fix that tank. Yep, so that's kind of already taken care of. We'll go on to T12. Do you have a valve exercising program that is acted on?
I'd say our biggest hurdle right now is capacity and lack of equipment, you know, like if we had a vac truck with some, like a pneumatic turner, we could just knock it out, but right now it's like, I mean, that's like, right, with everything going on, it's like, oh my goodness, we know it's important, but dang.
Okay. So it's really lack of time to.
Well, I would argue lack of equipment primarily, which, because it makes the task so time consuming without the equipment. Yeah,
What's
especially if something gets like stuck and then you're like.
Well, that would be the only need for the valve turner, because we wouldn't just go set it down on a valve and thing it shut, it has to be done slowly by hand anyway.
Yeah.
That would only be in case it got stuck.
Yeah, well, I was thinking like those valves that do get stuck and it's just hard. It takes like 5 guys to turn it, you know, if we had a pneumatic opener, we could at least ascertain if it's like needs to be repaired right away or if it just hasn't been exercised in a while.
So programs I've seen that have been successful, systems that have limited capacity for this in terms of hours, like person hours. Setting up a monthly goal, right? We turn 20 valves this month while we're out and about fixing things, doing other work. And what I would say is for valves that aren't turning, you know, maybe gather on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, track those. Okay, we have 10 that didn't turn this, you know, in these past 6 months. And then instead of buying a truck, you could rent one. Of course, you would want to do cost analysis over time, right? What would it cost to rent this twice a year for the next 5 years versus what would it cost to buy one? Because I do think those trucks are important. But does, I don't know, Delta would even have that?
Montrose sure would.
Yeah, do you think so?
Oh, heck yeah.
So could you rent Montrose's truck for a week? I mean, I don't know, but again, that's where that partnership program comes in. Do you even know who's the person to call there for that?
Something I want to add about that, because it's not explicit, is like exercising those valves also informs the asset management plan.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that, why it's so important, totally understand that it's important, you know?
No, that's a great point, Jeremiah, and I think that's where, I mean, you and I have already talked a little bit about the lead service line inventory, like all of these things are related, because first and foremost, you need to know what you have, where it is, and how old it is, like what shape it is in, right? And so that valve turning is a great way to even just start mapping that. Do you guys have a GIS program?
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of our valves were installed in the 70s now.
Back in the 70s, when we had one from the mines.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
God.
I mean, all of rural Colorado is where you are.
Yeah.
Which is that 70s and 80s, things were installed and running great. And now here we are, right, with no infrastructure funding. So, it's coming, it's definitely coming. We're working on the bipartisan infrastructure law, definitely opened up a lot of doors.
Oh my gosh.
So it's exciting. Okay, so monthly planning, identifying stuck valves, is that what we should?
Yeah. T12.
And working to evaluate truck renting or buying. I'm kind of working in two places right now, but I will make sure to send you all just one to-do list, not two. In the event of a main break, are you able to isolate short segments of the main to make the repair? So it looks like the system that's off right now, is that what you were talking about, TOPs?
Sorry, what? Oh, two.
Oh, that one's a yes, never mind. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so, two. Redundancy with your ORC, can someone certified at or above the level of this facility make integrity control decisions if the ORC is not available? So you've got two operators in training, you're almost there.
Not really.
Not really.
It's a, you know, it's a class B plant. And so we just, yeah, so it's gonna take some, I think we could go ahead and just knock out that test, but we gotta have the hours, so.
Yeah. That's the hard part, right? How many hours do you need? I don't know.
I think it's 3 years for a C.
It's 2 years for, C,
Okay.
and then 2. And I don't know how much going.
It's like 4 or 5 for a B, I think.
I don't know going beyond that. You can, if you have like a degree in something related to it, they'll give you some time, or for every 7.5 TUs that you get, they're able to credit you, I believe, a month.
Oh, really?
Like comes out to 75 hours.
Yeah, I think they're.
Just keep Jordan on in classes full time, we'll be there. No time.
That's right. Now that when you operate the plant,
I
right?
think with the education, it's only 6 months. It's only half a year.
That might be for a C or D though.
Okay, yeah. I can't remember.
But we can get that more information.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if you all don't mind putting your names on here, and for operators, make sure to give me your IDs, because I will be able to get you free teas for this. So keep coming to my trainings, Jeremy.
I'll loop these guys in more too.
Yeah, please do. And then your Chiletta's your ORC, is that correct? Yeah. So, I mean, he's not here, right? So I think you guys are effectively the ORCs. It's just he, you know, holds a certificate. So how can we loop you more into these conversations so that you're getting more bang for your buck? In terms of not just paying for his certificate, right? But helping you to make these choices. I don't want your toes to be stepped on in any way, but
It doesn't feel like that either.
yeah.
I actually asked him to be here, but he had to take down our vacuum samples and stuff today, so he wasn't gonna have time.
Yeah, no, he's a busy guy. He's running a lot of things, so that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know is like our situation is not uncommon for rural Colorado. It's like actually the norm.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yep. And I applaud you for investing in your operators, right?
Oh, yeah.
So how can you guys keep the channels of communication open so that, you know, you want to stay here?
Yeah.
Because that's the issue you see is that you get trained up and then, yeah.
So what are our demands, Jordan?
Part of the conversation. I'm gonna leave it there, okay? M3, does public water system ownership meet routinely with the certified operator to review water system operations, needs, fiscal planning, monitoring, schedule requirements, and regulatory?
They just trust the hell out of us.
Yeah. And I see that a lot as well, and you've got good operators, so you're okay, right? I think, trust and verify, you guys heard that phrase, right? The verification process is crucial. So that's where you can lean on me to kind of understand what resources you have to see what they're saying on the portal, on the monitoring schedule, right? So that accountability is there. So that's one, you know, I think it's up to you as a board if you want me to do some training with you on that, kind of what resources you have available in terms of keeping track of what's going on with your system, that verification process. So just let me know, you know, reach out. But that being said, you guys do an amazing job. So kudos to you for not needing to be verified. Okay, M5, does your system have up-to-date standing operating procedures for all routine and emergency tasks? So your routine SOPs are up to date, which is perfect. Emergency situations are created as an event occurs. We have several. Dot, dot, dot. Yes, so that could be an action item coming out of today, is to create an action checklist. Doesn't necessarily have to be an SOP, but it could be a what are we going to do in this situation? EPA has a great resource. They're actually called incident action checklists. And I'll send them to you, to the whole group, if you'd like. They literally are pull and play. So I would take that as a starting place, as a template. You can scratch out the ones that aren't applicable, add new checklists or to-dos for things that you would need to do that aren't on there. But it is really nice to just have that. I think it would help you sleep at night, right?
Skip them for.
So yes, answer. Or just
Let's see, no.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Somebody must have changed it. Does your PWF have bylaws or resolutions or ordinances that are reviewed at least biannually? So it sounds like a work in progress. Is that something you wanted to address? No.
Do you feel like it's, I mean, we're like constantly talking about like use agreements to the consecutive systems and ordinances, so it's an area that needs work and it's being worked on. So,
Oh, great.
yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, if we're looking for action items, it seems like there's not much to do there. But it is something that I would keep the answer no, so that you know that you want to continue to work there, right? Consecutive systems are tricky. I definitely think evaluating those continuously is really important, especially what happens if they have an emergency, right? That's another big one that I find often gets, fall through the cracks. Or what if you have an emergency, how would you inform them? How would you work with them to get water back on, things like that? Okay, M5, SOPs, we just did that one. M8, we'll look at the plans individually. Well, let's actually go to the storage tank plan. It's not required of that because it's technically a,
it's not a storage tank in the distribution system, so it's before your entry point, yeah.
So my recommendation is to still do the biannual periodic inspections.
Yeah.
And the once every 5-year comprehensive.
Yeah.
And then, just use those templates and checklists to go through. Do you feel like the current issue with the storage tank could have been resolved if there was more kind of inspections?
Well, it sounded like it was it was more money, right?
Yeah, it was a long and complicated thing that began with a bad lining, or a lining that went bad way before it was supposed to go bad. And then things just kind of spiraled out.
I think the need was identified a long time ago, and it was just like, oh, shoot, how do we finance this now?
Well, no, it was relined, and then there were, after relining, I mean, supposedly, I don't know if it's been checked since, but supposedly the relining has held. It's just the storage facility of the building over now has all the problems of the rodents coming in and everything else that is contaminating the water. So the tank itself is fine, it's the building.
I was thinking the 2 mil.
The 2 mil, okay, well, that's the 1 mil. The 2 mil is just, it's been put off because of funding issues.
Okay.
And the other thing is we have to have the 1 million gallon tank as the supply while we reline the 2 million
Right, so
gallon
we're
tank.
getting the 1 million gallon line. Yeah.
So it's.
Yes, it's a convoluted mess. Yeah, it is.
One that I can tell you're handling very well. Like being disinformed, right?
Well, we identified the problem.
Right, we've been working on it. Yeah, we've got a capital improvement plan, we've got a funding plan.
Excellent.
Working for it.
Excellent. Okay, M8, emergency response planning, that's why I'm here today. County level emergency response plan, I think mostly wanting to be involved in that. is what that's alluding to, and then section on municipal water readiness lacking. So you're saying it's lacking from the town plan?
Yeah, so like that's the emergency plan we have in the treatment plants. It's the county level, but if you flip to the municipal water supply section, it's like, make your own damn plan, and you know, it's that extent of
So
it.
we need to think our own.
Yeah.
O&M not consolidated, many aspects not addressed, asset management plan, either non-existent or data not to be needs to be overhauled. And again, consolidation and organization. So that's where, I mean, you know, valve exercising comes in. Really how I like to view O&M is you're setting up a calendar for every month, every year, and every decade, right?
Every decade, yeah.
What work, yeah, exactly. What work needs to be done in those timeframes. We do have a manual that you can use as a template. I would also suggest if you're working with other towns to already kind of pick their brains, you could say, do you have an O&M plan?
I should add that caveat is like Jordan and I have never seen that O&M plan for a water system, and there's sections, but it's not like a binder where you just it's comprehensive, yeah.
And that's where just even getting your eyes on a table of contents that makes sense to you and that you want to fill in, because if you have the pieces already, you're not starting from scratch, right?
That'll help with the budget, which is
We
coming
got
up.
some pieces.
You're starting with maybe 25 or 30% instead of 0, which is great. Does your public water system, move on to M9? I know I'm going kind of quick, I just want to make sure we have enough time for the tabletop. Do you track and have a program to reduce unaccounted for water loss? Fire department and some contractors fill tanks as needed, need to implement a tracking system for filling these tankers. That's a big one. That's a really
And I don't know if it's that much, right?
Like
Like
4,000,
gallons a month on average?
just when they cave.
Do you think
Yeah,
it's monthly?
Oh, it just depends on what's going on.
When you're
Sometimes it's more.
sewer.
If we need our sewer jet,
The fire department takes some time,
a bit more.
and they would.
Yeah, but that's the city paying the city.
Yeah. Start recording, how big is your tanker? Okay, boom, got it.
So then I try to log that, and I try to send them to different hydrants, so we're not just flushing the same one all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Good idea.
Good.
You might as well use that water or something.
Yeah.
Are you saying you do this tracking system for that?
Somewhere, well, they just tell me how much they're going, I don't have it in a spreadsheet or
Okay,
anything
okay.
anywhere, but.
That should be easy.
Yeah.
So we just need to centralize the data.
Yeah.
That's great. That's an easy fix. And you're not saying this so that you could charge them, you're saying so that you could track it.
Yeah, for our audits.
Yep. That sounds great. All right, any general questions on management stuff? It looks like we're mostly good there. Okay, we'll do financial real quick, maybe take a 5-minute bathroom break and then we'll go into the tabletop. F3, does your revenue stream cover all annual costs, including depreciation, future expenses, and infrastructure replacements? Not enough revenue to modernize, replace and repair its system, has applied for SRF loan. So
Is that extraordinary?
No, yeah, we do not have enough revenue stream to do everything.
Yeah.
And so F1, yes, that is, yep, that is a yes on F1. Oh, yeah, so you have the updated one. I see. Okay, never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, again, going back to asset management,
Right.
a big part of knowing what you do or don't need is knowing what you have, right? And how old it is and how long it's gonna last. So I think that's where getting that inventory is goal number one for all of this, right? Because you're already doing capital improvement there. It's just
the water system, yeah.
right, how can you do that more in your distribution system and not just for your tanks and your treatment, right?
And establish that longer term timeline of like, you know, where we need that funding and when, predicting when we're gonna need that funding.
Yeah, our CIP is kind of a reaction to the deficiencies, right? Yeah, at the moment.
Yeah. And I think, like so many other rural communities, it's gonna be about getting your head above water and then like continuing to bail out.
Right.
So, it's not necessarily, you're just starting from underground, right? And-
Yes. Very,
So-
very different.
Important to acknowledge that and acknowledge that work that's already being done, right? And that you already are doing this work. And, you know, having a 2.0 planning is going to be inventory and management. Because once you do get your head above water, how can you make sure that water quality is increasing?
Exactly, yeah, let's both feel that.
And that's where, you know, management specialty is really gonna be with that, creating those asset management plans. So I do think, you know, in the coming years, please continue to reach out to us so that we can help you with those plans. Because again, I think it's intimidating to look at a blank page with asset management, so, yeah. So we're here to help with that as well.
And you'll feel more on top of it once you do it. It's one of those tools that is very effective for planning. And you just gotta get more control over, you know, the future system. You guys are doing great though. The fact that you're planning for capital improvements and, you know, getting funding for SRF, that's great. You're ahead of the curve on that, trust me.
Yes, and just to add to that, SGM, an engineering firm, they did a great start of inventorying a lot of the assets.
Great.
And then, but then they used assumptions, and we need to ground truth a lot of the data. But then things like in the treatment plant, like valves and things like that, that wasn't a part of their scope. So we have like, we can pull up ArcGIS, all these spreadsheets, a lot of good data, but we don't really have a platform, maybe Cassell. We have like the asset management module in Cassell that's not being utilized right now, but we don't have a place to put that data, then it's to start making projections, you know? Yeah, so we need that tool, or we need to
And
figure
and
out.
that's where we come in, right, is we have that tool that will help you long-term plan. It's very detailed, very long, very in-depth. And feels overwhelming initially, but getting to the end of that, you just maintain that as you go, and then that makes your job that much easier, right? It's like, you know, like, okay, this pipe's gonna go out. If that pipe doesn't go out in that, you know, predicted time, fine, now you have that funding to either build on or use for something else that you know, have put into place. So, yeah, that's good. You kept kind of a head start there, but absolutely putting some real data in there, not predicted data is gonna be important.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I made a note for us to reach out to you spring 2024, once you have tank going on, to see if you guys are interested in working with us then. That way it's not totally on your plate.
Thank you. We'll do some management.
Okay, we still have items 3 through 5 to go through on our agenda, so let's take a quick break. We'll come back to a tabletop. Let's say, 203.
Scott Thompson, really like them, like comes out over here.
Yeah, they have some other resources there. We're kind of like trying to develop some, actually, Oklahoma. They just did, the other I was working on, they said, putting a plan together, a tool, they kind of encompass everything in one tool. And lo and behold, a few weeks ago, this was the first time I heard this. And it's gonna be a really useful tool, because they've given really good push. Implement that. So
Oh,
it's
that's
just
a,
gonna be.
we do, that's out in Louis, and it was bought.
And it's like, somewhere. It's coming to you like, so they're not, even if you do.
No, but it will do, because it'll help move it up, because you're gonna back force, it's not force it out.
Pulling it out, you know, just a manual.
That should have, that's true.
In where she is. She's
Right.
It takes into account,
She
like, what is your?
No, she's in
What
junction.
what is your overtime? Most of you have like.
Oh, and
That is
that-
like, versus someone who's in a
She does that?
No, she has her way to get on the but they use, you know,
And
it's
so
like.
they can roll over their.
Right, those valves.
All this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what I was
She's
listening
talking
to.
about.
It's beautiful. I just wanted to give
So
it
it's a,
like.
so that's what, this was a learning phase, because I'd not heard about valves and need for that.
That's my goal to do, implement that with systems, and we have that, you know, because it is kind of a stressful process. You know, it's this stuff, but once you have something, it's just a key.
I think that's the big
For the whole town.
in that area, like-
Well, I do not remember.
Okay, yeah, so Scott was showing me.
We've never really done
Florida.
ever.
And basically, it really needs to have.
So this is-
All the data.
Yeah.
So
One of the things.
CRWA is trying to get.
There's a trailer.
Permission for migrating to Colorado.
Oh,
And so that's sort of,
You can expose
Scott, it's
stuff.
like, yeah, we can.
It'd be really good
build
because
this
it's
stuff
portable.
Right now.
Stages of
And I'd
It
have to
still
make
does the
much
same
complicated
level of
work,
pressurization.
Yes.
Start and.
Accusation.
It's basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Use a pressure washer to cut the
And it was
surface.
almost right there. They said-
There is a trailer and it's, I think it's a 3-ton trailer.
They're just like, and we've done a good job, and there's, what I'm
You pull it
looking
up
for
and then
right
you can
now
leave it and
is,
truck
it's
roll.
No, let's get going. Let's get going.
It's gonna be good, yeah. Do we think our other folks will rejoin us?
Yeah, they're back on previous task.
Oh,
So no, they won't be.
They will not.
Okay. All right, so we are gonna go through this tabletop exercise. You've got questions in front of you. I'd love for this to be as much of a discussion as possible. I don't know what your system's gonna do in this circumstance, you all do, right? So I will present the situation for you. This is for a larger system, so a lot of this we're gonna have to translate back into what would this look like in Paonia, so I'm gonna rely on you gentlemen for that primarily. Okay, so day one, fire 4 of your distribution zones. I'm pretty sure you only have 1 distribution zone, is that correct?
Pressure zones?
Yeah,
yeah.
5.
5, okay. So you've got 1 that's good. High winds, firefighters evacuate treatment plant and storage tank. Day 1's not great. So day 1, who are you going to contact? Where is your staff? Do you have a direct line to incident command? Do you evacuate? And how long can your plant run without personnel? So let's start with the first one. Who's contacting who? There, what's that? Go ahead.
I would contact Leslie first.
Okay.
Go her in.
Town administrator. Yeah.
Town administrator, great. So it sounds like that's gonna be head of incident command, in terms of that's where everybody's gonna be feeding information to and receiving information from. Great.
For the next one, right, Leslie?
End of July.
End of July, oh, good.
Yeah, you can contact me for a few more weeks.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, whatever happens.
It'll be the town administrator. I mean, that's gonna be the primary point of contact.
Yeah.
What about while you're training the town administrator?
It's still gonna end up being the town administrator. I'll back up the town administrator because I've got more background and know more people, but it's still gonna primarily have to be the town
And
administrator.
that's it.
Think about what that backup is, right? Because what happens when they're not.
Yeah.
Right,
An
yeah. I
emergency.
mean, that was the last time we ever.
And part of this is that all of our water system is in the county.
Mhm.
So the county is gonna be, their emergency management system is gonna be involved in this right off the bat.
Okay. So does the county know to call Leslie then?
Probably not.
No. So did you, so on this last one, did you contact Chris right away? Or did you contact Leslie and me?
I contacted Leslie and then just put the thing out on tow warrant and talked to her.
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is the county thinks that the mayor is the incident commander, which is true in a FEMA lineup, but when you don't have an emergency services person for a county, but I think it's, you know, to have the mayor be the incident commander, certainly they're going to be the spokesperson, but I think that's got to be worked out with the county. And to tell you the truth, I just got another email from the county addressed to Corinne. So it's been a long haul to get them to switch over emails and contacts.
That's tough.
Yeah.
So that's one of your action items is you've got to get with the county and make sure, y'all are on the same page.
Have you done any sort of meetings with them?
Oh my goodness, we've been in meetings with them for the last, what, 6 weeks?
Oh, if not more, yeah.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Because of the flooding?
Yeah.
How's it going? Let's be real.
No, it's basically fizzled out and we're okay.
Those meetings were productive, they were good.
Yeah.
They were really productive, yeah.
So do you have a point of contact there?
Yeah.
We do.
So I would say Leslie would be in touch with Chris immediately, right? And that's the flow of information. So that's your incident command. What about operator wise? You guys feel like you know who to get in touch with during an emergency?
My first call would probably be to Corey.
Okay.
And while I'm calling him, I'd probably be texting the other ones.
Great.
Yeah, I'd probably get with like Kate Morrell right away too.
Okay.
Let her, just to keep her up to date on compliance, making sure we have safe water going in the distribution system.
Yeah, and I would switch that to the emergency number actually, because Kate's gonna just refer you to our IT team.
And that's that 303,619 number, that was at the top of this.
Be cute, not the winner.
Yeah, and that, the reason for that is, Kate is not gonna make the call on a boil water order, and really that's what we're worried about in this type of emergency, is the water safe to drink, right? How long would it be safe, and if it's not, how are you gonna issue that water order? Okay, so you're contacting us, that's great, thank you for adding that in, Jeremiah, I would love to see that. Again, just gonna call out, nobody's contacting Benny.
No, that was implied.
Oh, was
Jordan
it?
just said- Benny's getting woken up at 2:00 in the morning.
I mean, Benny is your operator. In our eyes, he is operating this plant,
Yeah.
right? So he needs to be informed because he's gonna be our point of contact, right? And that's the issue. That's the big issue, I think. So how is he going to be involved in the decision-making process in a way that you two feel comfortable with? That's what I'm most concerned about. And that's where, building that trust relationship with him, I think will go a long way.
Yeah, and I do think we have a good working relationship with Benny, and he's like, I can call him right now if I don't pick up.
Good.
Or he'll call me right back.
Good, I like that, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's a fine, but that you know that, and that you know that that will happen at 2 a.m., that's the important part.
Right.
Right.
Let's try it tonight. Let's call
I was
it.
just gonna say, could you try it out? Oh, just an alarm, Betty, go back to bed. So I do not recommend, I do not recommend listening to this. You're testing the emergency. That's right. This is always All right, so we've worked out, you've got a pretty strong incident command internally, externally, it's a little bit bumpy with the county, so that's your big point. Where is your staff? So if we've evacuated 3/4 of the town, does your staff have somewhere to be? Let's see.
Need an assembly point.
So we would defer to Matt on that, because they've talked about that a lot. It's like, where do people meet? Where do emergency response?
The staff, where's the staff?
But the staff has to have an assembly point if we evacuate.
That's what I was thinking. He's already thought of the safest place for us to meet and have good communication. So like, that's what I would do.
Yeah, so our traditional meeting point is gonna be out in Covey K8. We've got a seat out there, we've got parking, we've got lots of columns in and out of the building. As far as staff goes, my staff, while they in touch with me, we respond. And given that it's a fire, we'll be working incident command with Pellean Fire.
Yep.
So our response may be a little separate from, we're not necessarily meeting in a boardroom with dry erase markers, their needs may be different, but Pellean K offers everything they need really.
Do you guys know that? Is that written down? Okay.
I knew that because we talked.
Good, okay, so you know that, that's great, right? Because these guys are gonna be like, okay, well, like, where the hell do I go? So, you know where, that's great. Do you have a direct line to incident command? You already answered that, Leslie. And then whoever Leslie's talking to. Do you evacuate? There's one answer for this.
Oh, because in this scenario, everybody evacuated?
Or
Then yes.
Yes, is the correct answer. I put this in there because
Let me ask for.
there have been incidences where operators did not evacuate. And they lived, and it was a miracle, right? Get out. I mean, if the firefighters are evacuating the whole neighborhood around your treatment plant needs to be evacuated. And it's hard, it's really difficult to know that your plant might be compromised because of that, right? But nobody wants you gone. Right? We all need you around. Sorry, that got super serious, okay. How long?
It's a fire, it is serious.
How long can you run your plant without personnel in there?
With power?
With power?
Chemicals will last like weeks now, right? So
Is our internet still working too?
Sure. We'll go easy at the beginning. Amazing.
yeah, so long as the state, the compliance officer says that our it's okay that we didn't take grab samples.
Yeah.
I like that. Put that right back on, this is exactly your job. Yep, no, it is, I'm not being serious. Yes, that's perfect. As long as we are okay with what's happening, you guys can stay open, that's a great answer. It's gonna get more complicated, right? Power's out at your treatment plant now. Fire has passed over the plant. You don't have a generator to blow up, so it's not that big of a deal.
Evening sets in, it's nighttime to boot.
Yep. So, what would happen if a fire moved through the area in which your treatment plant is in?
I think fairly well, because it's a steel building, there's just a little bit of juniper on the east side of it, but.
Well, I don't know, everything might melt in there just due to residual heat.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the question. That's the question, right? How long was it there? How hot was it? I mean, these are things we are never gonna know, but as much as you can mitigate the fuel around it, definitely do that. I think they suggest even like 200 feet, so that's quite a bit.
Well, we got 200 feet.
well, there's that retaining wall, aren't there? Oh, yeah, we do, there's no
Well,
trees right there.
there is a little bit of tree right there, I guess.
Just a couple, yeah.
So
So,
it's food for thought. We want to keep those there, repair them out, right?
it would fare pretty decent.
Decent,
Yeah.
decent. So you could probably go back and run, right? Once you get electricity back.
Yep.
How will you supply power without a generator? You won't, right? No option there. At this point, who is making decisions?
Oh, I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
It's Benny.
Good job. No, but for real, I think you two are making decisions and you're bouncing it off of them. And this is actually where a contract operator comes in. Because you are boots on the ground, you're worried about your family, right? Where's your family and all this? Where are your loved ones? Where is your house, right? Benny's what, 30 minutes, 45 minutes away? You can call him and bounce ideas off of your panic brain to his probably more calm brain. And this is where having an ORC that's not in your system directly is really actually a benefit to you all. And why I suggest using that benefit. They did that in Superior. It was run by Rainy Environmental at the time during Marshall Fire. And they would call him every day just to check in and say, hey, boss, it was actually contract operators who were calling another contract operator, but you need to have somebody offsite who can help make those choices. Because again, you are worried about way more than just water operations at that point. Okay, so Benny's helping you to make decisions. How is that being communicated? Are you then calling Leslie?
Yeah, I typically am the one in contact with Leslie once we have the info to update her or.
Great.
So I wanted to mention something, the way we handled this water treatment plant breakdown is I think Corey messaged me and then I put together kind of a group text with the mayor, myself, Matt, and the clerk so that we could all keep in contact and keep our communication decisions, and so they could weigh in on what we ought to be doing. We actually managed it as a team, a management team, and hopefully the new administrator will do the same thing. I don't ever think one person makes the decisions because I don't have the technical knowledge. I may have the public outreach knowledge. Mary has the community knowledge. Matt, we put him on in case we were going to have to go door to door and tell people to shut their water off. So that's kind of how we handled that one.
And that's a great point, Leslie. Having a list like that of people that you put on that group chat, that's a great thing to already have, because a lot of times in emergency situations, it's easy to leave somebody pertinent off that list, but if you have that ready to go, already lined up, numbers already in, it's as simple as saying, okay, blast email, or blast text, and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Right? The very simple thing you can do pre-incident that will save you time.
Just a quick plug for communications during emergencies. Likely you will have cell service, but if you're using your cell phone that frequently, make sure you have some sort of backup power for that. I carry around a little charger in my car that has 10 hours of battery power. Probably not enough in this case, but hopefully you can get it somewhere safe to be able to charge your phone. Again, just something you don't think about. All of a sudden your phone's dead and you don't have any way to talk to people.
And do you have backup communication when the phones are down?
Right.
Do you have some type of
Radio.
radio system that you can communicate with each other over?
Let's bring those radios back, huh?
Do you have identification for the folks that are actually allowed into the area versus not?
You'd be surprised how many places still have radios. Like Castle Rock, one of the star systems in the state, they function exclusively on radios, right? Pretty cool.
Smart, not a lot can pull it down.
Yeah. Okay, do we feel like we talked about day one enough? Worst day. Worst day, don't worry. Okay, day two, power is restored. Fire is ongoing. It's probably passed through your system. What direction would it move through, likely?
You think up? You think that way?
It's probably going west to east, and then if it's on the north side, it'll be going that way.
Okay, so let's say it's west to east. It's passed over you at this point, right? National Guard is on site. Their job is to keep people from going places, basically. A lot of people want to go back to their homes immediately after the fire. It's dangerous, not allowed, right? So the road to your plant is blocked by the National Guard. How will you convince them to get that you are VIP and that you need to get to your plant?
I'm gonna call Leslie, like, Leslie, talk to these guys.
Leslie, you're gonna be tired day two.
It was quite an exciting weekend when Corey let me know what happened to the plant.
So this is again where, and this is a question I haven't really seen answered by any community. This is again another lesson learned from Marshall fires. They literally had to circumvent the National Guard, which I do not suggest. Right? So is there some sort of city official badge? Is there some sort of, I don't know, police department, if you have anything that could, say?
So we have a couple, we obviously have our badges we carry, but we're also issued through the county and the state individual cars that identify us as post-certified officers. Those cars are good, really all over.
Yeah.
We can use, but they're kind of isolated to us.
But you can ask.
Right, there needs to be something that everybody has, someone has to be responsible for talking to National Guard, showing them that badge and saying, hey, these are our people to get back in, right? There has to be that communication, they have to know what they're looking for, and it's gonna have to be the same for all of you, right? So maybe that's something to work on, is creating some kind of emergency badge, figure out what information can go on it, right? It's great to have, on the back of it, the phone numbers to contact, things like that, that emergency card can be used for a number of things, not just as your badge to get into the plant, right? It can be used also for other emergency data in a pinch.
The EMS service has badges, and they have a system set up, so you might want to check with them and see if we can get the badges made with theirs. We design our own, but it's just a clip-on badge with your picture on it.
Well, CDOT just recently used this badge and identification system for access across the highway. So Chris Stewart would have ties into that.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
To get those made, yeah. And it seemed to work. It was pretty quick, it seemed to be pretty efficient.
Right. I think so often we think these, on the front range, we think these emergencies are happening outside, right? And what the Marshall Fire showed us is that these wildfire can turn urban, right? And so that's why we're focusing on it specifically today. But I do hear you, likely you're not gonna have an urban fire, likely it's gonna be a wildfire. So we'll get to that post-fire stuff. Okay, who's making decisions right now?
At the treatment plant is Danny.
Oh, you're great, you're great. You two and Ben, or continue to make decisions. You route those decisions up through Leslie, who routes them through incident command at the county level. Likely, that's what's going to be happening. What I do want you to start thinking about is when have you and Leslie gotten sleep in the past 24 hours? Sleep deprivation is a very real thing during emergencies. So are you two taking shifts? Is there somebody?
We got 2 other operators too, so
Yep.
yeah, we'll be able to probably balance that out.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's where having Benny off-site, who's probably getting more sleep than you, also comes in handy. We'll move on to the next one. Day 3, fire's out. Do you have a hospital here?
Delta, 33 miles away.
Okay, well, don't worry about that. And do you have a dialysis center or folks home?
Oh,
We have an old hotel.
So that's one thing, they would be evacuated probably, even if it wasn't getting close to them. Oftentimes they get evacuated first. So moving them back in will be a thing.
I think it's PC to call them convalescing homes.
Convalescent home, yes, thank you. I apologize very much. Thank you. Over 60.
There are people under 60.
That's. Yes. Okay, so at this point, you have been in touch with us. And because so much of the system has been burnt and likely there's leaks everywhere, the bottled water order has been issued from us.
So it's not even a boil water, it's a bottled water, right?
Yes, and it's because of the VOC contamination that can happen after a fire from plastics, building materials being burnt, and then, you know, your lines being exposed to those. Basically, every service line you have turns into a potential VOC backflow connection. Okay, so day 3, who's working? Maybe one of you took a break, right? Leslie, do you think you're working? Do you have backup?
Well, when this all happened, I was in Phoenix. So I was working on my phone, but I mean, I just checked my texts and made sure everybody was talking to each other. And Mary and I talked quite a bit about how we were going to handle messaging to the public. So, I mean, we've got a great staff. I'd have to say people really communicate. Sam just went into motion. We got the person who knows how to run our website in to start putting updates on. We pushed all this information out to the media. So we're all working and coordinating. And I know you need one sort of ultimate decision maker, but I mean, I think that we all got an A for teamwork that weekend.
And I think that's the perfect answer. I think that's one of the failures of the incident command system is that it linchpins on single individuals too much. And I do think that your point that you've made twice, Leslie, is that it is always a group effort, no matter what, right? You will all be working this emergency, no matter what. And you will be working it while also being a citizen of this town. So how are you also taking care of yourselves, of your family? How are you getting rest? Where are you sleeping? Where have you been evacuated to, right? These are some of the things that major events are become more complicated because your daily life has also been upset.
And how are you communicating with your town? What are you doing to update them as well?
Yeah, especially when they're not in town.
Yeah, like, is there a number they call? Like, is
Yeah, you
that
have a
a good thing to let
person.
them know as well?
There is reverse 911 in the county.
Great.
But it wasn't used when the van went down.
Not for that, no.
No, but should it have been used for that?
Yeah, I
don't think so, because
yeah.
it was more of an ask for them to conserve water,
Right.
not to stop using or boil or anything, you know, so I think under different circumstances, then yeah, we would probably want to include that, but.
Yeah, because we talked about that, whether
Yeah.
we should pull that in or not, and decided it hadn't reached that level.
Well, the one thing I wanted to point out is a lot of people don't use Facebook. And I know you really relied on Facebook, which is how I heard about it.
Yeah, but we also contacted, like KDM.
Oh, the
Right.
radio station and
Right.
shopper and the newspaper and, yeah.
Well, the only thing I wanted to bring up is I don't know if the town has been pushing the county system very hard for people to know to sign up, because you
Yeah.
really have to sign up.
Oh, so it's code red, it's not reverse.
Oh,
Right.
we've been pushing that very hard. It was on that direct distribution mailer that we sent to everybody in town and around town to sign up for that. It's on our website. I mean, I don't know how much harder we can push it, but we've really been hammering on that, because we've told people, if you want to stay up to date on emergencies, this is going to be your best bet.
And like 3 of the 5 shopper articles I wrote have that in
Right.
it as well.
But I get,
Oh, I was gonna say, we also make sure that everything we put out, both on the website and on Facebook, we encourage people, reach out to your neighbors. A lot of
Yes.
people don't use this,
Yes.
go knock on the door, check on them, make
Exactly.
sure people know what's going on as well. So we also utilize our community and their word of mouth and checking
Right.
out people as well.
one thing I'd like to suggest is we somehow do a test of that code red or whatever it's called, to see how many people really are on it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because I didn't hear anything about this without going out, and I really think it would have been helpful. If people, because it would have been a nice test case too, for folks. Anyway, because I was wondering myself, what happened to so just a thought.
No, that's great, that's great. The question would be, how do you then get
The data back.
the data back, right? How do you know who was?
Would the software have a list of everybody it's going out to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they should have a comprehensive list.
Right, you can compare your population numbers to what you
Yes.
have, even on
Right.
the list would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's another thing you can do, farmers markets. Just whatever sort of community gatherings you have, library.
You can table and just encourage them to sign up, explain to them.
QR code, this is where you sign up for it, and they just go and sign up.
Yes, in 2 weeks. We're missing one.
So, okay, so I guess what I want to talk about is the distinction that there are regulatory requirements for a public notice for a bottled water and a boiled water order, right? So the first step is to generate a public notice. My recommendation to every system I work with is generate a public notice for a boil water and a bottled water order prior to the event. So we actually have one online. I can walk you and Corey through it if you want to, Maya. You literally just go, put the information in on what the emergency is, it sends you a template, and then that's what you give to them. What's in there is required to be in there. So my advice is don't subtract, add. And then when you're generating that, years hopefully prior to an event, you want to send it to your compliance specialist and say, if we had a fire, would this be an okay bottled water order, right? And then, Sam, I'm assuming this would be your job, maybe not, you would then go through, that where that file is, and that's what you send out to the public, right? And that's where reverse 911 is gonna have a similar message, but what it's gonna have to say is, go to this website and read the full public notice, right? Because just by nature of a text, you can't have that many characters in it. I would also think that PD would be involved at this point. Usually that's what happens. Door tags. I mean, people are still evacuated, so it's gonna be a door tag for when they come back. We have to take it off, right? These are the things you probably have to figure out in that moment. Large signs, right? And we have a boil water order, 1, because pressure issues, 2, because VOC contamination, and 3, because the plant went down, right? And so when a plant goes down, you then have to start it up, usually clean it, charge, get the lines with ultrachlorinated water, and then start your testing, right?
Could you clarify more? Because like you said, in the scenario of the plant, we lost power for a day. Tank's still full.
Oh, okay.
Right, but are you suggesting in the scenario the tank is drained, then we need to do the startup procedure, superchlorinate and.
Well, let's go through what was, right? How much storage do you have?
I'd say like 4 to 6 days right now.
If 3/4 of your system has been burned and you're.
Oh,
having a lot
and
of
we leaked
leaks.
everything? Okay, we're probably an empty tank, yeah. Yeah,
And also, it's been heated up, so you don't wanna, that water needs to be tested anyway before you start distributing it, right, just like the lines.
Yeah.
So you couldn't just go in and, it doesn't matter if it's full, you don't just wanna go do that, something, you know, right, if it heated up enough to start
That's that.
melting it, right, you're gonna have VOCs in there, noted.
And that's where you would be working, you two specifically would be working one-on-one with the division to evaluate what burnt in your plant. Like, are there any VOCs in your plant? Where are you gonna start testing for VOCs, right? Because if you can start producing water and fill your tank up, right? And, you know, shock your lines and go through the flushing process, of course. But then on top of that, you have this VOC worry, right? That's where that's uncharted territory for you guys, so, I would even investigate who could do that testing for you and what the turnaround would be. During Marshall Fire, I think Denver Water actually drove down to both of the systems, picked up samples, did the analysis. I don't know. I don't think, does Grand Junction do VOCs?
we've been sending all this to, Durango,
Durango.
yeah, but they probably do.
So that would be worth investigating. Yeah, who has what lab capabilities in your area?
And we can get it done right away.
Yep.
Wouldn't be foreseen it would be Mason Labs or, all right.
And and that's where it's like, a utility is gonna go out of their way to help another utility, but what is a private lab gonna do for you? And that's where having even a mutual aid agreement set up beforehand. You know, you guys will prioritize us during an emergency in our data. I don't even know if they'll agree to that, but it's worth asking. Okay, day 7, 4 through 7, so we're moving on now. Treatment's back online, residents are moving in where they can, residents are cleaning up, and the power is back on. So you're able to run your plant, folks are starting to move back in. Likely though, that bottled water is still in effect, right? So what you're doing now is running your lines with superchlorinated water and flushing. So that's good during the summer, right? During the winter, that's a bit of an issue. So are there places where you know that you can flush without it becoming an ice hazard? Maybe something to look into for sure.
Yeah.
How will you know if the water is safe to drink? That's where that VOC testing comes in. You're probably gonna be doing testing for a while on that, right? Again, that's where the flushing is gonna come in. What if you lost tanks? Sounds like, let's say this is happening in summer 2024. Your new tank is fine. You see the air go,
We're told that, got everything but your new tank.
Solutions, we're looking for solutions. No, so, I mean, you would get that back. So that's fine. But you've got one tank online, you know, you would be okay. If this is happening now, you don't have any tanks, right? What, you can't distribute water? Is that what that means?
Well, it's possible CDPHE will allow us to like use the first part of our transmission line as the contact time, and then we just have elevated chlorine for a while, but that's a maybe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's dependent on what Tyson Engel says, basically, right? He's gonna be calling the shots mostly then. Yeah. He's kind of one of the heads of the acute team. Okay, so day 4 through 7, everybody's pretty exhausted. So again, make sure you're prioritizing your sleep, make sure you're prioritizing your mental health. How are people getting the assistance that they need, right? Any questions? So I, at this point, really like to talk about where do we go from here so that this doesn't keep you up at night, right? The idea in my head is that this is likely already been keeping you up at night. I just made it way worse. So how can we make it better and find solutions, right? So what do we think? I mean, I saw some people writing stuff down. Do we want to go through some action items? See what people talked about? Yes. Would it be helpful if I was a scribe, just so we have it all in one spot? Yeah.
Leslie, do you have your hand up or you're just stretching?
What?
It said, Leslie, you got
Oh,
comments.
I thought I took it down, but it apparently I have another self that's pushing that button. Sorry.
Okay, so who wants to start us off?
One of the things that I see is we don't have contact lists and priority lists for who to contact, when, and that kind of thing. And we need to have those up and ready to go before we even have a disaster.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing that I see. And group emails, all this stuff needs to be in that.
And like she brought up too, what to do with the cell phone service towers.
Right.
It's not uncommon for them to go down here.
I know, if the tower is gone.
It won't take much to knock out, and actually our cell tower is in a wildfire zone.
Yeah.
So it could go down, be down for a long time.
The one tower.
The one tower.
I've been searching for it.
Not Verizon or AT&T, we're searching.
Yes.
So we need that. Also, we need badges for essential personnel.
Right. And lists of people that should be.
Yeah, who
badged.
are
Yeah.
essential personnel.
So, the county was talking about jurisdiction, and I don't know the first thing about jurisdiction and how it applies to incident command, but you guys were mentioning like the state fire department could have primacy over the situation. So like, you know, like, I don't even know how to go about establishing jurisdiction in different events, but so people know, you know, like, we're not stepping on the Forest Service's toes during a particular incident and things of that nature.
So let's talk about that. If the emergency is isolated to Paonia, likely you would be able to call a lot of the shots. If it is outside of just Paonia, likely the county's gonna step in more. And so that's where building those relationships is really crucial. Let's go back to Marshall Fire. We were talking only to Boulder County Emergency Management.
And then where we run into it with wildfire especially is it's BLM or Forest Service. So the feds are in it right off the bat. And the way I've got some training in emergency incident command because I'm on the EMS here. And generally what we get is it goes locality, then it goes county, then it goes state, and then federal. And whoever takes charge, that's who's in charge, and it goes up that way. And you'll be notified. They come and they basically.
Right away.
Pretty much, but it's always confused. It's always a nightmare.
And that's the reason for those preemptive conversations, because
That's why
most of
we
the
need to-
time, when those incidences occur, nobody has proactively talked to each other.
Right.
But if you actually have the name and phone number of somebody that is like on that end that you can contact and say, hey, this is what we're doing, they know your emergency plan, they know who to contact on your end. There's facilitating that communication as much as possible on your end is gonna smooth it out for you. So it doesn't become chaos, because absolutely, I mean, that's a perfect fuel for a fire. So
Which means that we need to set up an incident command through the town. We need to have a system and contact list right off the bat. That's something we need to do. That's probably the first thing we need to do.
Yeah, it's the federality that we contact, right?
Well,
So
if
would
we have a
he
system of
wants
who to
to
contact.
them directly, right?
So a lot of-
You'd still use the chain of command, you'd
Yes.
still go.
It goes up and
whomever
down.
you would contact.
But we need a system that we can just send to them on a sheet. We fax them a sheet or whatever.
Yeah,
And they know who to contact when they need.
So they're not emailing her in.
yeah.
Yeah. Into the ozone.
Well, and if they're aware that you have preemptively planned for all this, they're less likely to come in and be
And take
like,
over.
we're taking control, right? Like, they take control because they want it under control, but if they know you have it under control and they know who you communicate with, less chance they're gonna come in and just take over.
Right.
Oftentimes, they're gonna like defer to the people that are directly in the situation. So
And
you're.
sorry, I've kept my hand up too much, I think. But one of the things I wanted to add to that is I've done a lot of emergency management stuff. And when I was in Glenwood, we had a little girl that was being life flighted in a helicopter from Grand Junction to Denver. And she went down in a snowstorm. Rick Selter might remember this in Glenwood Springs. And the jurisdictional fight became real, and it resulted in an hour's delay in helping her. So one of the things that I've heard that is one of a great effective way that backs kind of what CDPHE is saying is that you have an emergency command group meet every 3 months to talk and build relationships, because that's what was wrong in that situation. The agencies were secretly jealous of each other and jockeying for power, and it resulted in putting a little girl's life in danger. So that building those relationships on an ongoing basis and meeting on an ongoing basis is really important, because then you all know each other. If you just have a list of phone numbers and you're calling in an actual emergency, it's not going to work as well.
Is there any reason we would want to find out what Hotchkiss is doing, since
Yeah.
they're only 8 miles away?
Do they have their own water system?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Mhm.
Likely they're gonna be affected by all of it. So I talked a little bit about this before, local emergency planning committees, they're amazing. Likely we would probably have to establish one. DHSEM has your Delta County Emergency Manager, is Chris Stewart. We've already talked about him, so you know him, which is amazing. Let's see if you have one here. And sometimes these contacts are, not up to date. Oh, look, it's Chris, okay. So I would ask him if he has an LEPC meeting, if he joined the LEPC meeting.
Actually, they're putting together a training right now.
Perfect, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So I get standard banking. I just put that as an action item. Thank you, Leslie. Meet with emergency command group once every 3 months. I'm putting down local emergency planning committee because that's the language. You can call it whatever you want, but if you go and say LEPC, you're speaking to the code and you know what you're talking about, kind of thing. Okay, so far I've got contacts lists, backup for cell phone communication, badges for essential personnel, establishing primacy in your jurisdiction. Really, that's establishing relationships with the emergency command group on the local and county level. And then establishing on-paper incident command structures within your town. What else we got? I think that's a pretty good list, just saying, you don't have to add to it. Anything you operators wrote down in terms of technical?
Yeah, that's this issue of VOCs and just having a lab that we know is gonna have quick turnaround time for us, is easy to access. We didn't really talk about PFASs, and I don't even know if the EPA has guidance right now on what to do. But I don't know if this necessarily fits into emergency response planning, but as a mitigation strategy, we should seriously look at activated carbon media filtration for pulling VOCs. I'm not sure how effective activated activated carbon or VOCs, it's various, okay, because I know it's really effective for PFASs. And so our ultrafiltration, it's like great for surface water and a lot of things, but not PFASs, so it's a drag.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point that you bring up, and that's something where you would want to work again with our engineers prior to an emergency, have things on hand prior to an emergency, right? So I'm just gonna put investigate activated carbon emergency treatment. That's a long process, but that in itself is like years of work, that one action item. But I do think you bring up a really good point, like what if the fire causes a bigger long-term contamination issue for your source water? That's what you're concerned about. That's what I hear this group being most concerned about. We can weather a fire. You know, mountain communities are made to weather fires and floods, right? And what does recovery look like? So we have, called the post-fire playbook. See if it comes up. I'll be sending this in my follow-up email as a resource. So there's a whole page of resources. So definitely look into those. Cleanup, recovery, finances, all that good stuff. I think everybody has an area that they will find in this, just make sure everybody's covering it, right? Or it's covered by everyone. And then here's the playbook itself. And this was written specifically for water systems. So this is really where you're going to be getting a lot of that technical information from in terms of what can you do, right? So I think this, you know, if I was to give you one piece of advice moving forward, it would be for everybody in this room to look at the post-fire playbook, because not only does it have pre and during fire, which I know it sounds like you guys actually have handled really well, but it's that post that we didn't even get to talk about.
Do you have a plug for the wildfire ready watersheds action plan? Because like my understanding is that program is the funding that we need to.
It is.
Yeah, do the accessibility assessment and can potentially get money for this activated carbon media filtration.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, really what you're doing with that is, it's almost like a risk and resilience assessment for fire in your community, right? And you're giving it to the right people so that they can get money. That's effectively, so if you look at SRF, the eligibility survey is saying, this is what we have, this is who we are. That's effectively the same thing for wildfires.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah is a champion for that, so.
Just, you know, a lot of that, it comes back to like our source water issue and drought resiliency, and a lot of the mitigation strategies for fire is mitigation strategies for drought. So it's like they go hand in hand.
Can I bring up something that's been talked about, and it's an evacuation plan, which seems like a really big deal? Do we have to create an evacuation plan for the citizens here, and even just talking about the Paonia Care Center? How in the world does that, how does that happen? Is that?
I know quite a bit of people that work up there, and they actually do have their own plan, and I'm sure they'd be willing to share and work with us on that as well, like.
Right, because it seems it's easy to say those words, but
Yeah.
how do you actually do it, and where do people go?
Right.
I mean, we only have very few ways out of town.
Yeah, and even Hotchkiss don't have a lot of room, like the high school, is probably
Wow.
the next biggest place in here.
I think, unfortunately, Montrose is probably the answer. I'm saying unfortunately because it's so far.
Yeah.
And there's one way there, two ways.
Well,
Basically one.
One is 5 hours and one is 45 minutes, okay.
Well, it's an hour and 30 minutes.
Well, and does Montrose know that they're getting your people?
Right.
Right, we don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, that's county, right?
That's another county.
Yeah.
Because at that point, they're talking And they're talking to DHSEM on a city level, and DHSEM is actually probably telling them that you are getting people from.
Yeah, Delta was struggling with that, like, everybody's emergency response plan was to go to the Delta hospital, and they're like, we're gonna be dealing with like this. They're already overrun.
It's not very big.
It's not a fully fleshed out plan, so that's what I'm saying, yeah.
It's better in the Walmart parking lot.
And that's, again, where jurisdiction starts to come in. If this is the answer, they're like, okay, well, then we're gonna take over and make that decision. Which honestly is helpful. But is it the right thing for your community? You would know that better than them. Go ahead.
Well, in your community, knowing where to go to. I mean, that's really important, right? That cuts down on like, they're already in fear, they're already like, you know, trying to not be hysterical, so just one less thing for them to have to worry and focus on.
Yeah, and in truth, it's a lot closer to Grand. Because there's what, 20-mile difference between the two?
Yeah.
So much more capacity in Junction than there is in Montrose.
I would agree with that. That was my first thought, but I thought it was too far.
No,
No.
there's not that much difference.
Yeah.
But for me, it's kind of like, how do you get people there?
Right.
You have people that are 90 years old in their house, they can't drive themselves, so.
So Matt pointed out the bus barns right over there.
Oh, so then you gotta get the district involved.
Then we have to get them in the buses.
So that would be part of your emergency planning group, right? You're gonna meet them and your plans, we're gonna need the buses, so,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you can see how quickly this blends.
Yes.
To include everyone.
Right.
We started with a conversation about water, and we have included all the way up to state Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management.
All connected.
The one point that I didn't make, and I will regret it if I don't, is FEMA has a lot of buckets of money, and the feds have a lot of buckets of money for emergency recovery, but we have to have receipts. So anytime anybody is working on it, anytime you're spending money on emergency response, have a code for it in your billing system. And then you can say, you just pull that code and you say, look, FEMA, everything from this code was for the emergency. And we know it was because we tracked it during the time. We didn't go back and make it, right? So that's just working with your HR, billing folks, even just set up the code.
Right.
Might not use it for, let's pray you don't use it for years, right? Forever.
Got that, Leslie?
Well, we already actually are implementing that in our new accounting system. And everyone knows that I think I sent that out, that if you spend any money on this water treatment plant situation and our sewer plant sewer line collapse that might be recoverable, you need to keep track of everything. I used to be the non-mental health and public health grant writer for Pima County in Arizona. So I know that drill real well with FEMA, and you just have to keep track of everything.
That's it. Our time is winding down. I really want to respect y'all's time and really applaud you for coming today. I don't get to do this a lot with decision makers, so I really appreciate you giving me your time.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, I will be sending a lot of resources via email, if that's okay with everybody. I have two here. This is an after action review. If you'd like to review any of the emergencies you've gone through recently as a group, figure out what you'd like to change in the future. That's a good one. And then this is incident command system wallet cards for water systems. So this is a good place to start when you're just getting that stuff down on paper. Any questions for me? Any follow-up that I can do with folks on my end?
Just in general, the primary emergency in my mind is actually more recently to go over our camera. More recently, there was a reservoir treatment. And reservoir that somebody thought was filling fast. And we didn't talk about that at all, and that seems like a totally different sort of emergency fire. Is that also under the purview or?
Yeah.
before us in that room.
So your fear is of flooding?
Yeah, like a dam breach.
Dam breach,
Yeah.
yes, okay. Yeah, I can send you a tabletop for that if you'd like to do it as a group. I can probably not come back until like, 6 months, 8 months from now, just because my travel schedule's crazy, but I could come back to it.
This is the abbreviated version of what they typically do.
Usually we do 4 different tabletop exercises. It's a flood and a landslide, but it's similar, so, but yeah, if you like, I'm more than happy to put that on our to-do list if you're on. My biggest recommendation for that one is, again, having an evacuation plan, and equipment. How would you start to move, mud and rocks? Right, because that's the biggest issue, so that your people can get back to your plant and start treating water. Power outages are another big one with that, and then do you have containment for your chemicals so that they wouldn't create a spill and a hazard? Are they elevated enough that you can have 3 feet of water? Likely you wouldn't have 3 feet of water anyway. Okay, yeah, so really it's making sure you're sorting like that. And any cross, I'm just trying to think through it really quick. I think that would probably be, significant structural damage.
But yeah, maybe houses floating. No, not even the gas station.
The gas station is.
Oh, yes, it would. Yes, there would be a gas station that would be taken out.
Bridges, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So that's where I would push for that in your source water protection plan.
Yeah.
Oh, it wouldn't affect our.
It wouldn't affect
It'd be
source
the
water.
river, our source waters are up there.
Yeah, it would be more the town.
Yeah. So yeah, it's how can you make sure that you have excavators to move stuff so that you can start driving.
Yeah.
The county and the state is what we rely on.
And co-warn, you're a part of co-warn, right? So you would put the call out and say, they're handling all of this, but we need to get this one road open. Who has an excavator?
And that plan you would want ahead of time, where you would focus, right, where you would focus cleanup at. A first order, would be the most beneficial. But all this other stuff would go towards that, like all the emergency planning as far as like your contacts, your badging for the area, everything else you're planning for, you can take all of that and apply that to a different emergency, right? With excavation, if you don't have those tools and the county doesn't jump in, have you talked to a company that you can rent it from that can come in and do that? Do you have that contact on hand? Things like that, thinking ahead of time of like, because you don't want to be searching for that in that situation, right? Let your town knowing, you gotta sign up for the emergency management network, right? This is where we expect you to go during an emergency. All of that stuff's the same. So you're really just taking that and applying it to a different type of emergency.
So the way we like to end these is to encourage you to go have fun with your evenings. This is all very heavy work. It's not, an emergency, but it's not an emergency, which it really does. It brings up quite a bit of anxiety and our stress hormones go up. So I hope you all get a chance to relax, have some downtime, process this as a group. I will be sending those action items, but maybe forget about it. I am always a resource. Angela is always a resource. We are here for you. We are really excited to work with you. Really excited for kind of the work that you all are doing. So Jeremiah and I will continue to work as long as you want me.
And kudos to you guys, because just being here and doing this and all the things you've done ahead of time, you guys are way ahead of the curve. There's a lot of folks that aren't even at this point, so kudos to y'all.
Too bad the press wasn't here.
Can you send a press release for that, please?
That is one thing we cannot do, actually. I'll have to refer you to our communications.
Yes, I think I know at least very well.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you
I
very
don't
much.
have cards, unfortunately, I forgot them, but there's my contact info. You'll be hearing from me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, Jess is about to do. Yes.
Yeah.